Hello and welcome to the Kentucky Today podcast. I'm Lawrence Smith, editor of Kentucky Today, alongside our managing editor, Mark Maynard, and our content editor, Chip Hutchison. Glad you could join us today. Well, many of us will be in Dallas, Texas next week for the annual meeting of the Southern Baptist Convention. It's a combination family reunion and business meeting, and there's lots of business to take care of next week in Dallas. I sat down with Brandon Porter, who is the SBC's Vice President of Convention Communications and a Kentucky Baptist, and asked him about what to expect. The SBC annual meeting is a huge event.
Mm-hmm.
Help us understand what goes into planning and executing a big event like the annual meeting.
Yeah, it's really a years-long planning process. That's why maybe people think it's odd that they have to vote on the site location of the annual meeting so many years in advance, and it's because of needing to make sure that there's space not only for the actual meeting itself, but for the exhibit hall and then all the other ancillary events that happen around the meeting. And there aren't very many cities in the United States who first can accommodate that, but then second are available at the specific times that Southern Baptists want to meet during the summer months in that mid-June range that we have settled into. And so that's one piece that it's years out. And then once the location is locked in, then there are site visits that happen all throughout the year. There's preparation, there's planning, there's communication with the folks who are there in the host city, and then all of the other entities, exhibitors, all of those who will come and be a part of that annual meeting. And so that's sort of one side of it. And then the other side is, the work of the executive committee and dealing with the business that comes through this year's business portions of the meeting. For instance, the executive committee will pick that up, or the other entities where it goes, they deal with that. They then work back and report that through. That's where we get, the book of reports that helps messengers be prepared, the things like the messenger guide, the app. And then we come and we're there and we have the meeting, and there's a lot of process that goes into that, from anything from the SBC president and the parliamentarians working through to all those who give reports, certainly those who plan to come to microphones and make motions and things like that. And so everything is thought through, measured over and over again. And so it's a lot of work, a lot of labor goes into that meeting, even though it's 2 days once it actually pulls off and happens there of the actual Southern Baptist Convention.
Lots of moving parts. We'll get to some of that business that you talked about, but at first, are there any big changes that messengers should expect this year from last year? For example, last year there was a Tuesday night business meeting. What about this year?
Not this year necessarily with the extended session or an extra session. We're back to two full sort of working days for the annual meeting. I think the biggest potential change is just the way that the president's personality is expressed through the meeting. I think that really does have an impact on the meeting. If you've been coming to meetings for a while, you can think back about the personality of those pastors or those leaders who have stood in that role as SBC president, and you see their personality shine through, and it moves that meeting a little bit different than the last one. And if there's going to be a new president at the next meeting, it'll be a little bit different than this one was. And so I think that's probably the biggest difference you'll see.
So this meeting will look a lot and sound a lot like Clint Presley, is what you're saying.
That's right. Absolutely.
It should be interesting then.
Mm-hmm.
Many Kentucky Baptists, especially those who don't spend a lot of time on social media, may not be aware of the controversies that the messengers may take up during the meeting. What do you expect in terms of the big items of discussion this year?
Yeah. So, we have been dealing with sexual abuse now for a number of years during the meeting. And so this year is the first time we'll actually hear some updates from Dr. Orge here at the Executive Committee on the opening of an office to deal with sexual abuse prevention and response across the SBC. And so I know that there are a number of initiatives that are going to be not only updated, but also introduced and announced for the first time there at the annual meeting. And so that's one thing that will come. Folks probably are aware of some of the lawsuits that have happened and the financial burden that has caused upon the executive committee, upon the SBC. And so the executive committee is proposing a CP allocation budget that tries to help to alleviate some of those expenses and the funds that have gone away, and so that there is a proposal for $3 million to be allocated out of the CP budget for legal expenses. And so folks have been discussing that online, and that's scheduled. The executive committee is scheduled to bring that to the messengers for discussion and for vote. There are a number of things. The Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission has been a part of much discussion on social media and Baptist press stories. And so that's something that will probably come. We've heard about sort of a law amendment. I don't know if you'd call it 2.0. I don't know what to call it necessarily, but that issue coming back to messengers. Of course, that one would come as a motion from the floor. And so someone has to be at a microphone and to make that motion and it go through the process for it to kind of get the weight that it needs to move forward. And so those are some of the things that quickly come to mind when we think about this. The business and financial plan, Dr. Orge and the executive committee are proposing. It's not really an update to the business and financial plan as much as it is a new business and financial plan that is updated and leans on the trustee system that we have in the SBC, really dives into the Constitution and bylaws, was his aim, a little bit more heavily than perhaps we have in the past. And so that will be coming to messengers for discussion and for vote.
Yeah, that deals with some of the calls from past meetings about increased transparency. Dr. Orge is essentially saying, trust the trustee system.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the transparency is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And that's the system. That's our governance structure in the SBC, is that the messengers elect trustees to serve on the boards of their entities, and the trustees hold the entities accountable. And if the messengers don't like the work that the trustees are doing, then there are ways for them to elect new trustees who will do the will of the messengers. And so I think that's his opinion, is that is your transparency, is putting the messengers, putting trustees on these boards who will do what the messengers ask them to do.
There are always, or is always, some level of debate over resolutions, and the resolutions committee is going to be bringing 8 resolutions this year. What are those?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are 8. There are one of them is the thankfulness to the city, and so that should be one of the easiest to pass. As we're extremely thankful to the folks in Dallas for welcoming us. We also have some great celebrations this year. We have the Cooperative Program's 100th anniversary that we'll be celebrating, and the Baptist Faith and Message 100th anniversary that we'll be celebrating. So there are resolutions related to those things, and then other resolutions deal with things that are pretty well right down the middle, I think, with what Southern Baptists believe and the convictions that we hold. I'm sure there are some tweaks here and there that folks will ask about and want to have considered. But, a ban on sports betting, a ban on pornography, that's on there. Also calling for a ban on abortion pills and a closer look at chemical abortions. There is one, I've heard Andrew Walker call it the omnibus bill on natural family, and it deals with gender identity and same-sex marriage and all kinds of things that would, you might consider, would fit under that natural law category. So there's that one. There is one on international religious liberty. And so a number of those things are topics we agree on. Now, we may all have some nuance in our opinion of how we arrive there, or other things that should be added or taken away from those resolutions.
You mentioned the 100th anniversary of both the Cooperative Program and the Baptist Faith and Message. Are there special celebrations surrounding
There are.
events?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Baptist Faith and Message will be celebrated on Wednesday afternoon, and President Presley has led the way in that. And so that will happen around 2 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon will be the celebration for that. On Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m., actually it's at 2:40, in that afternoon session, there will be a celebration for the cooperative program. And so we've been working here at the executive committee to prepare that, and Dr. Orge will lead us through that. We're looking forward to it. And then the resolution that I mentioned earlier for cooperative program for Baptist Faith and Message will follow those celebratory presentations. And so we'll take them up immediately. And that really will be a way for all messengers to express their endorsement, their cooperation for those things. And then one other thing in the exhibit hall, the exhibit that we have for the cooperative program is pretty well dedicated to CP 100 this year. And so we have Timeline, the Historical Library and Archives here in our building in Nashville is going to be setting up some displays that will have artifacts that date back, some of them more than 100 years old. And so that there will be that. There'll be an opportunity for you to create a video, and you can share why CP is important to you. What does CP mean to me? And then we're going to be creating a podcast series, Lawrence, and we found this fantastic host to help us with this podcast series from Kentucky. You might be familiar with him. And we're going to be talking about the impact of the cooperative program all across the convention in this podcast series that you're hosting, that we're going to have the opportunity to create, Lord willing, there in Dallas.
I do look forward to doing that. Should be fun.
Mm-hmm.
One big highlight is the commissioning of new missionaries. And thankfully, we have a lot of new missionaries in the pipeline. Is there time to do what the IMB usually does and name each one as they can? Some can't be named because of security reasons. But how's that going to look this year?
I think it'll look just like folks who have attended it in the past will expect. It's very moving. It's very serious. So many people say that is their favorite part of the annual meeting is during that sending celebration on Tuesday morning. And, it really reminds us of the, if we can't agree on anything else, we can agree on the Great Commission of sending missionaries to those who have never heard the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we come together and we lock arms as Southern Baptist and we give of our dollars, we give of the best in our churches to be faithful and obedient to the Lord's call. And we have the opportunity to pray for them and to celebrate and to rejoice as they are sent out faithfully on this calling that God has placed in their lives.
No, you're right. That is, if there's one event that kind of ties us all together for the reason we do what we do, it's that sending ceremony.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So as the messengers descend on Dallas over the next few days, do you have one piece of advice for everyone?
Yeah. So I would say that one actually has sort of 3 sub bullet points. So bullet point number 1 is be in the room. Decisions are made in the room, not in the hallways, not in the exhibit hall. Be in the room. If you want your voice heard, your vote to count, be in the room. The second one is download the SBC app. It's available on all the platforms. It has all the information you need, not just like where things are happening or the schedule, but actual documentation is in there. And so, the resources that you need are there in the SBC app. And then third, I can't help but have a shameless plug here for the Baptist Press app, where we work really hard to have stories. We'll produce somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 80 stories over those 3 days while we're in Dallas that cover events that are happening, cover business. And it's important because some days we write a story, say on a Tuesday, we write a story for something that's going to be fleshed out on Wednesday. And so to help someone make a decision, that story is there Tuesday night for them to read and be prepared for the vote on the next day.
Let me add one more thing. Dress for the weather. It's going to be hot in Dallas.
It is going to be hot in Dallas. Yeah, I just don't think there's any getting around that in Texas at this time of the year. So be prepared for warm weather.
Mark, you've never been to an annual meeting of the SBCs. You need to put that on your bucket list. Chip, you have been. Do you have one really memorable moment from an annual meeting that you want to talk about?
Yes, there are several, but the one that really stands out in my mind was in 2019 in Birmingham, Alabama. And while we talk about the business that's transacted, what stands out to me was one of the sessions that was not a business session, but it was more of a testimony and a report time. And Nick and Ruth Ripken, Kentucky IMB missionaries, told their story, very impactful. But also on that panel was Andrew Brunson and his wife, and people might remember that name. He was a pastor in Turkey who was imprisoned for 2 years. He was charged with treason against the Turkish government, and his crime was preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And about 7 months into his imprisonment, he was not doing well, and he recounted how he had lost 50 pounds. He was admittedly suicidal, but his wife would visit him once a week. That was all she was allowed to visit. And she would tell him, I'm going to be back next week and I want to see you here. So she was his strength to help him through that very, very difficult time in his life and ministry. And it just spoke to me about the impact of having a faithful spouse to encourage you when times get difficult. Was certainly a very moving testimony and a very impactful one for me.
Yeah, she said that, I want to see you here, meaning don't commit suicide, don't despair.
Exactly.
I can see why that's a moving moment for you. Thanks for that, Chip. Mark, you got to report some very good news this week. The ACLU dismissing a lawsuit challenging the state's near total abortion ban. What happened there?
Yeah, a real victory for the pro-life folks, and which include us, of course. But what happened there was the plaintiff actually said they wanted to dismiss, and I'm sure because they felt like they weren't going to win. That you don't dismiss unless you think that. And I think they saw that it wasn't going to work out. And, Kentucky Attorney General Russell Coleman had his forces there, and I'm sure they were very well prepared for the battle that was coming, and it just didn't come. So that was a real surprise that happened last Friday about 5 o'clock. As all late news does on the weekend, they came out about 5 o'clock with the latest thing, but it was really good news. You're right for Kentucky Baptists and for the pro-life folks who have been fighting this fight for a long time. And I think what it also speaks well of, Lawrence, is that there are no more cases on the docket right now to fight against the pro-life choices, the pro-life forces, the pro-life legislation. Now, that doesn't mean there's not going to be, and I'm sure the ACLU is not going to say, oh, well, we lost, we're done. They won't quit. They're going to keep coming right back at us, and we just have to be ready. And, part of the way you get ready for that is you pray about it. And I think that's what, as Kentucky Baptists, we need to continue to do. The fight is not over with abortion, and, we see that almost every day in the news. Really, every state, is doing different battles. So just keep that on the front of your prayer list, I think, right now.
Yeah, in fact, Mark, after that move to drop that lawsuit, I had the chance to talk to Scott Klusendorf, who's a well-known pro-life advocate and activist who was here in Louisville. I talked to him about this ruling or this decision, and he basically said, celebrate. It's good news, but don't relax. Don't rest. He said Roe v. Wade is gone. It was overturned, but it's still very clear since that ruling 3 years ago by the Supreme Court that we have a lot of work to do to change the hearts and minds of people to help them understand that abortion, the pro-life view, is the right view, the true view, and a reasonable view. And he said that churches have a very key role to play in that. In fact, he offered 3 specific things that churches can do to advance this notion, this fact that these unborn children are children. He said, 1, preach, teach, and counsel that abortion is a sin. Number 2, minister to those wounded by abortion, and then equip people to make a case for life. And he said it could be done in less than 60 seconds. And in fact, he did that in front of me. He gave the pro-life case in 60 seconds, and he said anybody can do that. And you can see his case, that story on Kentucky Today right now. But it was really interesting to talk to him about this, about where the pro-life movement is and where it is going. That story on Kentucky Today right now. Chip, another important ministry here in Kentucky is Crossings Camps. We talked about this somewhat last week, that they're going to have thousands and thousands of kids ready to come to camp and hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. But Crossings has a new president.
Yes, Dan Talcott, who has been with Crossings for the past 9 years. He's been the director of business development, has an office here in the building. But the Crossings board and their search team they went through a nationwide search, and they chose Dan to be the next president. He will officially take over August 18th, when the current president, Lance Howerton, will officially retire. Lance announced his retirement last year. And, what's so interesting is Crossings is what a jewel it is as far as camps for grades 3 through high school senior. And they opened registration for camps for next summer, for 2026. On the first day, they had 16,000 campers registered. They can handle 27,000. So it just shows you the popularity and the great programs they put on. We see a number of young people, children, students who are saved, a number who are called into ministry by going to these camps. Cedar Moore here in nearby Shelby County, and then Johnson Creek in western Kentucky in the Hardin community. And so it's great. This will be I think a smooth transition with Dan, because he is so familiar with Crossings and with the Crossings culture. So we're excited for Dan. He's a faithful Kentucky Baptist, member of Kenwood Baptist Church here in Louisville.
And we have to talk about and express gratitude to Lance for the job that he did, really building the Crossings ministry into something that is being modeled or trying to be modeled elsewhere.
Yes, and in a lot of state conventions are selling their camp properties and not wanting to have that burden, I guess, is the best way to put on a good camp. And so Crossings has staff that goes to put on 2 camps in Tennessee, one in East Tennessee, one in West Tennessee. They put on a camp just north of Washington, D.C. for the Maryland-Delaware Convention. And then they also have day camps in eastern Kentucky that occur this month up until, I think, June 20th, something like that. So what a great ministry, and we are reaping a great harvest of souls and of dedicated lives as a result of Crossings Ministries.
Indeed. Mark, someone else who is trying to reap souls in an interesting way, is a Kentucky Baptist pastor who has a very interesting witnessing tool and technique that you reported on this week.
Yes, a member of First Baptist Church in Owensboro, Chris Joslin, is he's a street evangelist, for lack of a better word. He's we've seen street evangelists through the years, and he wasn't a real aggressive one as far as confrontational or anything like that. But he had kind of, like we do a lot of times, he had kind of gotten away from just from sharing the gospel. And the Lord really burdened him about it and said, this is your calling. This is what you need to do. You need to get back out there. And about 3 years ago, he got introduced to a guy he saw actually at like a festival, this thing called Prayer Stand. And basically I describe it as like a pop-up tent, something easy to put up. It's got prayer on all 4 sides. It's not covered or anything, but it's got places to put, literature or tapes or anything like that. And they set it up in highly trafficked areas, like at festivals and things like that. And he said, what it's done for him, he asked one simple question: how can I pray for you? As people are walking by. Sometimes they stop. Most people really aren't offended by just saying, how can I pray for you? And what he has found is that is really opening doors. And even when they say, no thanks, I'm good. He said, well, will you take this gospel tract? Because he'll have gospel tracts with him. And we all know gospel tracts have helped lead people to the Lord as well. So anyway, he will maybe be out for 2 hours. He said he was in one event in Owensboro, and he was able to have 18 gospel conversations, 2 or 3 salvations that came out of that. So, it works. It's working for him, and it's getting him back out there. And, I think about, we talk a lot about at the KBC about pray for Bob, and Bob is burden, opportunity, and boldness. And that's exactly what this is. He had the burden to get back in there and start talking about the Lord again. And this prayer stand has given him the opportunity to do that. And then he's got the boldness to actually share about Jesus. And he actually ended up, the guy that had the prayer stand that set it up in the first place ended up giving him the rights to it, giving him all the stuff. He actually sells these things now. It's kind of a sidelight, not his main job or anything. But he does sell these prayer stands that you can easily fit in your trunk. And you could set it up anywhere, any corner, any place that there's a lot of traffic, a lot of foot traffic that's going to see it. And it's just been very effective for him. And I'll tell you, what really caught me, Kenny Rager is the one that brought it to my attention. And we all know how Kenny is. Of course, he's pastor at 12 Stones in Elizabethtown now, but he was with the KBC Evangelistic Group forever. And we know what an evangelist he is. And he has one. He said he used one in New York City, and it worked. He said if it can work in New York City, it can work in Kentucky. So he actually purchased one for his church, and that's what Chris Joslin, suggests people, consider that they could, the churches could buy them, and they could use them that way. But yeah, it was an interesting story for sure.
Interesting story, and a really good witnessing tool. Another one, and we're running out of time. We got a couple of minutes left, but Vacation Bible School season is starting up all across Kentucky, and we need to be praying, of course, that as these young students, these young children come, hear the gospel, the Lord will save them, and that they can be an influence in their own families for the gospel. But we're getting reports about record attendance in churches all across Kentucky.
Yeah, Vacation Bible School is one of the best evangelistic tools that any of our churches have. And, every year you see fruit from it, especially the people that really prepare and really put the work in. The Lord will honor that. And I think we've seen that happen over the years for sure.
Yeah. Indeed. Wrapping up on a couple of items. One, we have some college baseball to watch this year. We don't get that every year, but there are 2 Kentucky teams that are in the Super Regionals, and if they win there, they go to the College World Series. U of L hosting a Super Regional, and Murray State is going to a Super Regional. So that's good news for the baseball fans, college baseball fans in Kentucky. Great job by those teams.
Yeah. I find it very interesting. Murray State has had a good baseball program for many years. This is their first Father's Save Advance since 1979. And if you look at a number of my friends in Western Kentucky, talk about this being the greatest achievement in Murray State athletic history. I don't know if that's true. I think it's just the excitement of the moment, perhaps. But it should be noted that they play Duke this weekend. And as anybody is a UK fan, we know anybody but Duke. So we are all pulling for Murray State.
And of course, U of L has been a baseball power, but has not been to the Super Regionals or the World Series in a couple of years. And Dan McDonnell has gotten this team hot at the right time, and they're in a good position now. They're playing Miami here in Louisville this weekend. So the best of both those teams, U of L and Murray. Unfortunately, UK eliminated, but they were also in the postseason. They went to a regional this past week. Chip, I want to end on this. We need to be praying for the family of Paul Strahan, a much beloved pastor of First Baptist Owensboro, and for his church. He passed away this past Monday. You knew him. Talk about Brother Paul.
Paul was he's been there for 20 years at Owensboro First Baptist Church, and we've got a story posted about him, and it'll be updated. Funeral arrangements will be tomorrow, but has just done a phenomenal job at Owensboro First Baptist, has led them through renovations, expansions as their ministries have expanded. He was presented the Distinguished Leadership Award in Cooperative Program Giving in 2019 by the Kentucky Baptist Convention. He served on the mission board. I got to know him through work on, I think, the Public Affairs Committee, and certainly our hearts go out to him. He was battling blood cancer, but this was not expected, a complication that arose very quickly on that, and he passed away, and we want to continue to pray for his wife, Leanne, and they have 2 daughters. Paul was nearing retirement, is my understanding, and just a very beloved pastor there. He had a long-time staff, and they've just done a phenomenal job of ministry there in the Owensboro area.
Well, certainly pray for his family and for First Baptist Owensboro. We can see those stories, good news and bad news, on KentuckyToday.com. Go there for the latest updates. And for more on the Kentucky Baptist Convention, go to kybaptist.org. Lord willing, we'll see you next time on the Kentucky Today podcast.